and Richard. And right, over to you, Noel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. I'd just like to introduce staff from Waterfront Auckland, Carl Gosby, Frith Walker and Richard Aikens. They're here to answer all the hard questions. As some of you may recall, this is an item that was previously considered by, I think it was the Regional Development and Operations Committee under the previous council, who supported the restoration of the Voss Yard, which is in the ownership of Waterfront Auckland, supported that in principle. We've been working through the details about how that can be progressed. The proposal is to commit $2.3 million from the Built Heritage Acquisition Fund for this building's restoration, on the proviso that Waterfront Auckland raise the balance of the funds. Waterfront Auckland would also be required to report regularly on progress towards that back to this committee. The funds actually don't get transferred to Waterfront Auckland until they advise you that they have raised the entirety of the funds. The only other issue I'd like to comment on is that in the Built Heritage Acquisition Fund and the LTP, there is sufficient funds to cover this commitment.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Clow.
Can't help but think this is a beast that's taken off a little bit. When Councillor Webster and myself first had a meeting with Waterfront Auckland and people representing the interests of the Voss Yard, it was merely a situation where we were asked to underwrite the restoration of this building, and we're now committing 2.3 million. It's one heck of a big change, and there are other heritage buildings, and it's consuming over half of our heritage fund. So can you just explain where this went wrong? Because when we were shown around the yard, and I had another visit as well, there was a very enthusiastic bunch of people, and well-known people, and very well-off people, and people with connections to people with a lot of money, and that was where it was going to go. But now it's just turned into a $2.3 million request. No refund, no nothing. No underwriting, no nothing.
It should be. Just pull it towards you, Richard.
Okay. We have been working for a number of years with the Percy Voss Trust. They were a group of private individuals who felt when we came to the position of gaining commitment from them, they felt very uncomfortable about making that personal commitment, and we have now decided to proceed down the route that's being proposed at the moment. The underlying fundamentals around the building being unique and the last one of its kind in Auckland and New Zealand still remain, hence Waterfront Auckland's commitment to keep pushing to try and restore and maintain this property.
Just to further comment, while it is half the funds, it is only half the funds of this financial year, and there are no other proposals, demands on that fund for this particular year.
Oh, well, okay, so I'll ask you a question now. So there are no other proposals. So out in Avondale, the Hollywood Theatre, famous Willis Truss organ in it is up for tender at the moment. That's a heritage building, Heritage B building, as you know.
Yep. And
the building next to it, the old Avondale Town Hall. So scenarios like that are not out of the question then?
Subject to the relevant committee's approval, absolutely. The issue is is the building at threat? I mean, in this situation, the organ may be at threat, but the building is scheduled, it's protected. So those are all the factors that are taken into account.
I'll just reserve. I'm not convinced on this at the moment, and I just can't believe it's gone from zero underwriting to 2.3 million.
I have Councillor Crum next.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Can you just explain for me on the establishment of its heritage value? given that it's not registered in the New Zealand Historic Places Act or in the proposed master plan?
So whenever you look at a heritage building, the first thing you look at is the appropriate management regime. That may well be scheduling that provides a legislative protection. It still doesn't, if you go down that route, it still doesn't deal with the fundamentals of those heritage buildings, which are that you need a viable use in that building so that it is retained, restored. Staff have been, in terms of this building, staff have been concentrating on that aspect rather than trying to get the legal issues sorted out. It's already in council ownership, albeit Waterfront Auckland. The threat to this building is that it hasn't got a viable ongoing use, so we've been concentrating on that aspect. It could well be scheduled. We just haven't focused on that at all.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Lee.
Yes, could I just ask, could you just explain that this is not a restoration of a static heritage building? It is meant to be a visitor centre experience, dynamic and ongoing, very much related to our maritime heritage, but also into the future with young people and so on. So could you just talk about the attraction side of it rather than just the heritage side?
What we want this to be is a working example of Auckland's marine heritage, but also a way that a lot of the skills and activities associated with the marine industry in Auckland, which is very important to carry it forward into the future. It's a way of engaging a much wider part of Auckland in the Wynyard Quarter and bringing people from all over Auckland and creating new experiences for them. It's an opportunity for a visitor attraction. There are work-related skills that can be gained in this building, and also the opportunity to work with the marine industry and their training programs as well. So we see this very much as a living, breathing building rather than a static museum display.
So just a supplementary, so the 2.3 commitment could be construed as the investment in the centre itself. You know, it'd make more sort of sense perhaps to put it that way, would it not?
Yes, it could be put that way, but it could also be put in a way that we see that as a catalyst to the success of the process, and as a catalyst to gaining the other investment from the private sector. It makes it a lot
There's
more.
two aspects to it then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
Thank you. I support the capital coming from the Built Heritage Fund, but I suppose, and I support the overall restoration of this amenity, but where I've raised concerns, and as Councillor Clow, many of us have met with the enthusiasts of the Percy Voss Yard, is around its ongoing operational survival. And I suppose I'm just wanting to explore that, because as much as we're enthused as far as young people learning how to boat build and the visitor industry and that, I just want to make sure that this capital grant gets put over, and I just want to hear from you that the business case at an operational level is sustainable going forward, and there won't be hands coming out to the council saying 2 years later, we've been so successful we need to do A, B or C, or 3, we've fallen short of our target. So just if you can take us through just quickly the business case from an operational view and what the expectations there as far as them keeping that alive and sourcing alternative revenue.
We're also very clear that the business case must ensure that this building is self-funding, and at first level we're very focused on making sure that once the money is invested in the building is maintained at least in that current state and improved going forward. So what we do not want to be in a position in a number of years' time coming back to this council for more funds because the building hasn't been properly maintained after the initial investment. So we're very clear about that. That will form part of the business case, and any operating lease we may enter into with any third party. We understand that there needs to be a commercial aspect to these operations, and that there are a number of revenue streams we've identified around berthage, hireage, venue hire, a potential for a cafe, other types of offers, and we're also looking into potential public funding of the work groups through the Marine Industry Association. So there'll be a balance of income streams. It won't rely on one set of income streams, and those will underpin the business case that sees the ongoing operation of this yard going forward. That business case will be worked up as part of the refurbishment and operation, because those funding models are very important to understand exactly how much money can be invested into this operation and where that money will be spent.
Is it, just supplementary, is it plausible or possible that the business case will include a ongoing subsidy from operational annual subsidy from Waterfront Auckland, or has that been excluded?
The Waterfront Auckland Board had made the decision very early on to grant a rent-free, but only in lieu of certain key KPI indicators around public engagement, support, and so the operating model always had to deliver on what was essentially a sponsorship against some very key indicators.
So the only subsidy effectively coming from the ratepayer is around the fact that it's rent-free.
Correct, but I
not only it's a significant one, but there's no cash up on an annualised basis.
No,
Thank you.
So just remind councillors, because I'm getting an ever longer list of speakers, this can only be drawn down once, and that the commitment expires on December 2017, and there's ongoing reports to this committee about whether or not they're raising their own money, because they've got to raise half of it, so that's all in the executive summary. Okay, so we have Councillor Casey.
Just further on from the question of Councillor Clow, can you tell me specifically why the independent backers didn't want to proceed?
They weren't really backers. They were a trust that had taken on the opportunity to around the redevelopment and the operation of the yard. So they in themselves had no financial investment in the redevelopment, and when it came to the point where Waterfront Auckland wished to put some pressure on around commitments around the financial commitment, they felt that they weren't in a position to meet those obligations going forward, at which point Waterfront Auckland felt that we had to then choose another course, always being mindful that this building is now been vacant for a number of months now, and we're very concerned that during this period of inactivity something may happen to it and it could fall into future disrepair.
I'm still unclear. At one stage they were, and then they weren't. What happened in the interim?
Sorry. At the beginning there was a huge amount of support from the marine industry, especially the Classic Yacht Fraternity, to support this project and find resources. That support has been consistent for around 6 years now, and they remain supportive. But in terms of actually people who had committed to finances, we hadn't got to that stage. The first conversation was with Waterfront Auckland, with Council, around the Built Heritage Acquisition Fund.
Right, so when push came to shove, there was no money.
They've got to raise half.
I feel if it's appropriate to say, there's been notional commitment from some of the trusts, but the council's support of this project will be hugely beneficial to the furthering of the conversations around other support coming from other fields.
Can I just say there has been a bereavement of a key player.
Yes.
That's had a big impact.
That's right.
So there was some ground lost for approximately 12 months around that bereavement. But the support remains strong from the marine industry.
Thank you. Councillor Cashman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question was actually very similar to Councillor Brewer's. The only thing that hasn't been mentioned, with the operational funding not needing any council additional top-ups, will that be including depreciation? Well, it's going to be a significant factor of the building of this type.
Predominantly the issue with depreciation, we would hope that the ongoing maintenance would keep the building in a fit for purpose position.